So we are now here at Bhaktapur. So this is one of the most medieval and the historical town in Nepal so far. So it's a city which was in the olden days taken as the center of the Newari civilization ever. There was the king, namely Malla. So this king had six kids. Right after the demise of the king, three of his kids started dividing the valley into three small kingdoms. The first one stayed here, became the ruler of Bhaktapur city. The second son went back down to Kathmandu, and the third kid just got there to Patan. We are now standing in the center of the square. That's just a part of the palace which you look at from this block, roughly from 16th to 17th century. That's pretty new from the 19th century, like an influence of the neoclassical base from England. And there is the main palace with the 55 wooden windows. Those were set by the king on the stone pillar to commemorate his 55th birthday anniversary. That's what this is known as a palace with the 55 wooden windows in the history of Nepal. And that stone building, during the earthquake that happened here, it just fell off. And they did a wonderful restoration of this building. That is another beautiful temple from the 16th century dedicated to the god Shiva. Now I would like to allocate to you the statue of one of the most outstanding kings in the history, namely King Bhupatendra Malla. So most of the stuff that we can see here were actually contributed by this king. He's sitting on the huge column with a stone pillar on a Namaste poster, paying homage to the goddess Talezu Bhavani. And that beautiful golden gate right down there is actually the entrance to the palace from the 17th century. It's all the copper but beautifully gold plated. There are so many different kinds of bells within the city here. Some are the major ones and some are very specific. But the bell right at the top where you see the kids sitting just up there, that's known as a big bell of the town. In fact, when they had no means of mass communications back in the olden days, so this sort of bells were used as a means of public alarm. That's the Golden Gate, masterpiece work, full of wonderful characters. And you can see the different deities on both the sides. And there is an intricate figure of the goddess Kali. We're just going to see the most beautiful part of the royal palace. And here is a small courtyard which is full of three wonderful buildings. So this one is fairly new from the 19th century. The middle one from the later part of the 18th century. Here is the masterpiece work with a building from the 15th century as the main palace. The best part about this palace, you still see the original wood carvings. We have a little gate. We just go to see a beautiful golden tap inside the palace there. It is known as a Sundara or like a Nagpokhari even today. But back in those days, the royal king and queen, they used to come early in the morning and take a bath, fetch a water for the goddess inside that temple there. So this is like a golden tap. It has partly of the head of the cow, and then you can also see the crocodile-shaped mouth is like a copper but gold-plated. It could be rather interesting in those days when we used to have this whole thing in use. And we have a little sculptures, and over the top is a golden cobra. The serpent in Hinduism is god of water. So this is like a king's royal laundry area. That's what you're going to see, the pair of snakes trying to protect the king. There is a pool right down here, a royal swimming pool for the king and queen. And that's just a changing room of the king and queen. This is no doubt is like a stunning place. as the finest monument in Nepal. So we now would like to head on to the Pottery Square. That's where you can see the making of the stuff by the group of people called Prajapati. See, we are here already to the Pottery Square, which you look at there is the stories of the natural clay, which have all been brought by the nearby hills, and they just are using manually, and they all have their houses like a local workshop or working studio, and they have people from generations getting involved into the pottery. So we now are going to look at the actual process of making up potteries. That's just a wooden wheel which he has been spinning there and gradually going to make a piggy bank, which he has been learning from his father or grandfather over 400 to 500 years back in Bhaktapur. Finally, we arrive here to see the final process of the making of potteries. It's like a firing place, or you can call it kiln. So these are pretty modern. They still have oven there with charcoals and firewoods. So this is the easiest way to do it a little faster. See, this is a very traditional kiln which is still in the existence for the last 400 to 500 years back. Look at the way they have been keeping the ashes, the straws and the pots getting piled up and keep it for 2 days until they get ready. They're also making a wonderful puppets, which are the true representation of the different people living in Nepal and also the deities. Well, this is of Kumari. You can see the huge building to the straight on. That's like a 5-storied building, which is nicely set up over the 5 elevated platforms with a beautiful 5 different pair of characters getting lined up from the bottom to the top. So this is known as a temple of Nyatapol. This is the tallest and the most beautiful temple in pagoda architecture. So there is a history about the pair of figures, and those have been said according to the history of Bhaktapur. So the 2 men at the bottom, namely Jaya and Pata, they were the wrestlers believed to be 10 times stronger from the normal human beings. And then you see the pair of stone elephants. They also were believed to be stronger than the wrestlers. Then you gradually see like lions, griffins, respectively, the lioness and the tigress goddesses as the extra strongest guardian deities in Nepal. So this temple, in fact, is dedicated to the Siddhi Lakshmi, and they have a wonderful fair during the day of Biscuit Jatra, which is a nice time to come and see. And this huge building is a little older, from the 15th century, dedicated to the dreadful form of the god Shiva called Vairav. And these are the local gentlemen, so they have been doing their massive contribution for making up their beautiful chariot, and that is for the festival called Biscuit Jatra, which is like an overwhelming celebration in Nepal.